About a month ago, my life completely changed in the blink of an eye. I had just finished my shift at work and was on my way home. As I was approaching an intersection, nothing out of the ordinary, just waiting like everyone else, a truck slammed into the back of my car. The impact was so sudden, so violent, I didn't even have time to process what was happening. Later, I found out the driver had been drinking. He was drunk. And because of that, my world turned upside down. Saying the crash was bad doesn't even come close to describing it. I ended up with broken ribs, a busted shoulder, and both my legs fractured. The pain was unreal, and even then, it wasn't the worst part. What haunts me the most is what happened right after the crash. My car caught fire. I still remember the heat, the sound of the flames crackling, and the panic I felt trying to move, trying to escape while every nerve in my body screamed. Half of my face was burned in the fire, and so were parts of my body. I don't think I'll ever forget that smell or the helplessness I felt in those moments before someone pulled me out. I honestly don't think words can do justice to the pain I felt. I remember feeling like I was on the edge of life and death. When I finally got to the hospital, I was barely hanging on. I was in and out of it, the pain making everything foggy. I could hear voices, nurses and doctors talking around me, their hands moving fast, trying to stabilize me. Later, when I came to, I didn't know where I was at first. My body felt heavy, wrapped in bandages from head to toe. I could barely move, barely even turn my head. I was then informed by a nurse that they had contacted my husband and that he was already on his way. For context, at the time of the accident, my husband had been away on a work trip, which is why I guess it took him some time to come to me. When I woke up next, my husband was right next to me, but strangely, he wasn't even looking at me. He was on his phone. I didn't have the strength to say anything, so I moved my hand slightly, trying to get his attention. Eventually, he noticed I was awake. He told me he had been informed about what had happened and that he got the call about my accident during a very important client meeting. Then, in the same breath, he said how bummed he was to have to leave that meeting to come and see me at the hospital. It was like, I don't even know how to explain what that felt like. I had been through hell. I nearly died, and all he could focus on was how inconvenient it was for him. He didn't look sad. He didn't look worried or even shaken up, like you'd expect someone to do when they see the person they love broken and burned and barely hanging on. Instead, he talked about how hard it had been to find a red-eye flight and how annoying it was to leave in the middle of his work trip, as if that was the real tragedy here. It was like my accident, my pain, my trauma was just a detour in his schedule. Lying there, feeling helpless and disfigured, I gathered enough strength to whisper to him that I was in a lot of pain. I was scared, more scared than I had ever been, and all I wanted was some reassurance. So I asked him how bad I looked, hoping maybe he'd soften his tone or say something comforting, anything. But he just shrugged. With zero hesitation, he said, "Yeah, you look pretty bad. This is going to take a lot of time to recover." Then he made this vague gesture over my body like he was pointing out damage on a broken down car. And if that wasn't enough, he raised his finger and actually pointed at my face. He looked right at me and said, "Have you talked to the doctor about that? Your face looks really bad." I blinked, unable to say anything. I was already in pain, physically, emotionally. But hearing that from the one person I thought would be my safety place made the pain cut even deeper. I didn't need sugarcoating. I wasn't expecting him to pretend everything was fine, but I had hoped for a little humanity, a little love. But he was talking as if I didn't just go through a life-altering accident that broke my entire body, as if this were some minor fender bender and he expected me to look the same. The days that followed were a blur of pain, medicine, and slow, careful movements. I was completely dependent on the nurses and doctors, and I have to say, they were kind. They showed more warmth and compassion than I could have imagined. They checked on me constantly, talked to me gently, cleaned my wounds, adjusted my pillows, and held my hand when I was scared. Every single person who came into my room said the same thing over and over again. "It's a miracle you're alive." And I guess in a way it was, looking back at the condition I was in and how close I came to not making it. Maybe it was a miracle. But at the time, it didn't feel like that. I didn't feel lucky. I felt broken. My husband wasn't around much during those first few days. In fact, he disappeared after his initial visit. No explanation, no update, just gone. I didn't even have the energy to ask where he went. I was too busy trying to breathe through the pain and convince myself to keep fighting. Then came the day when the bandages on my face were finally coming off. I was terrified. My heart was pounding because I didn't know what to expect. I knew I had burns. I knew they were bad, but part of me kept holding on to some fragile hope. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad as I feared. My husband was there for that moment, sitting silently in the corner. As the doctor slowly peeled away the layers of gauze from my face, I watched him. I watched his expression, and when all my bandages had been peeled off my face, I watched him recoil in disgust, like he literally pulled back, like he had seen something repulsive. His eyes widened and he didn't even try to hide the look of disgust on his face. That was how he saw me now, not as the woman who almost died, but as someone to be looked at with revulsion. Trying to stay calm, I asked the medical staff if I could have a mirror. I wanted to see my face for myself. I could feel my hands shaking as I held it up, and there I was, the person staring back at me, looking nothing like the woman I remembered. There were huge scars stretched across my forehead and cheeks. My skin looked red and half burnt. I couldn't even look at myself for more than a few seconds before the tears came rushing out. The doctor and the nurse quietly walked out, giving me space to process. I turned to look at my husband, still holding the mirror in my hands, and the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Those scars make you look unbelievably ugly." This is when I couldn't control my emotions any longer and started to ugly cry. I didn't need to hear from him how bad I looked. I could already see that. I needed comfort. I needed reassurance. I needed someone to say, "You're still you. I'm still here." But instead, he was just putting me down even more. That entire day, my husband couldn't even look me in the eyes. He kept shifting his gaze, avoiding me like I was too hard to look at, and kept telling me over and over again that I needed to get plastic surgery done as fast as possible. However, because I already had so many surgeries done and was under a lot of medication, the doctors were clear that I needed to first recover. I needed rest, stability, and time. They gently told me and my husband that cosmetic procedures were the least of my concerns right now. Then, the week I was supposed to be released, my husband visited me at the hospital and he looked somber. I hadn't seen him since the day they took off my bandages, and he called me ugly. Not a call, not a message, nothing. I assumed that maybe he had been overwhelmed, maybe he needed time. Still, part of me hoped that he was back now to help me pack, to take me home, to at least try to be there. But the second I saw his face, I knew something was off. He was acting distant, and I asked him what was going on. He then confessed that he had moved out of our house. I stared at him in shock as he continued to tell me that he had given it a lot of thought, and that he wanted us to separate. I just stared at him. For a second, I couldn't even understand what he was saying. I was still sitting in a hospital bed, barely able to walk, held together by stitches and scars, and he was telling me that he had already packed up and left? When he said those words, my heart felt like it was breaking into a million pieces. I could barely breathe. I couldn't believe that this man was breaking up with me right when I was in the middle of such a terrible period in my life. I asked him why he wanted to leave me when he knew exactly what I was going through, but he just looked me in the eyes and said in the most matter-of-fact tone that he couldn't keep living with me when I had a face like that. He actually said that. The pain in those words was unbearable. He said he would feel traumatized living with me for the rest of his life. His words made me question everything. The love I thought we had, the vows we had made, everything we had been through together. To him, none of that mattered. What mattered was how I looked now. That was all that was left. I told him as calmly as I could that the doctors would help me, that they were going to make my face better, that things would get better, that time would heal, and that everything would be okay. I wanted to believe that. I wanted to believe that with his help, with time, everything would get back to some kind of normal. But instead of seeing any hint of comfort or understanding in his eyes, he just shook his head, and then, in the coldest way possible, he told me that he would always be too scared to look at my face for the rest of his life. My own husband was leaving me because of something I couldn't control. Something that happened to me in an accident. Something that could have happened to anyone. And here he was, making it all about his own discomfort, his own fear, and not about what I needed, what I had always needed from him. He also informed me that I would have to find my own way back home. He wasn't going to help me anymore, and after that, he just turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone in that hospital. I had no choice but to call a friend for help. She and her husband came to my rescue. Both of them couldn't believe that my husband had decided to leave me at such a horrible time in my life. They drove to the hospital and helped me pack up. They drove me back to my home, and I was grateful for their support. It's been 2 weeks now since that day. I'm still recovering from my husband abandoning me. He hasn't contacted me anymore, and won't even return my calls. The only time he contacted me was to tell me that he had filed for divorce and that I would need to sign the papers soon. Ever since the accident, I've been trying to focus on recovering. My face surgery is scheduled for a few weeks from now. The doctors are hopeful that I'm going to be just fine and be able to make a fresh start. My lawyer has also been working tirelessly on my case. We decided to sue the drunk truck driver who hit me, but it didn't stop there. We also decided to go after the company that employed the driver. It turns out that he worked for a huge multinational company, and we found out that this company had a history of hiring reckless drivers who were willing to speed just to meet their delivery deadlines. They clearly put profit over people's safety, and that's something I couldn't just let slide. They were as responsible as he was for what happened to me. Recently, my lawyer called me with some incredible news. He told me that after much negotiation and back and forth, we had reached a quick settlement. The company was willing to pay me $2 million. My jaw almost dropped. I was in total shock. I was just hoping for something fair, something that could help me pay medical bills, pay for surgeries, and help me rebuild my life in some small way. I didn't expect the compensation to be anywhere near that amount. Part of me feels overwhelmed ever since I found out about this. I don't think I've ever heard that much money attached to my name before. This settlement is huge, and it's going to help cover a lot. The surgeries, the therapies, the care I still need as I recover. Now, the thing is that my husband has found out about the settlement, And it seems like everything has changed. Suddenly he's telling me that he misses me. He's telling me that he was maybe too hasty when he decided to leave me. He wants us to forget about the divorce proceedings and get back together. It's honestly hard for me to even wrap my head around it. Just a few weeks ago, this man couldn't get away from me fast enough. He was the one who walked out of that hospital room leaving me alone, broken and crying, telling me that he couldn't live with me anymore because of my scars. He didn't even care to help me get back home after everything had happened. He was cold, distant, and didn't look back. And now suddenly he's acting like none of that ever happened. Now he's acting like he wants to be there for me. It doesn't make sense. I can't help but feel weird about it all. It doesn't feel right. I mean, how could it? How could I just turn around and forgive him for what he did? When he left me, I was a wreck. I cried for days. I was physically and emotionally destroyed. And instead of standing by my side, he chose to leave me to handle it alone. I can't just forget that. I can't just act like I didn't feel completely abandoned by the person I thought would never leave me. That kind of hurt doesn't just disappear overnight. And now here he is, wanting to come back into my life like nothing ever happened. It feels wrong. It feels like he's only reaching out because he knows about the settlement. Part of me wonders if he's only trying to come back because of the money. Would he have even cared if I wasn't getting compensated? Would he have reached out if I didn't have this financial support coming my way? I'm not sure. And that's the hardest part for me. I don't know what his intentions really are. If he had called me before the settlement was even mentioned, if he had reached out when I was at my lowest point, maybe I would have understood. Maybe I would have seen it as him being genuinely concerned about me and wanting to make things right. But now it just feels like a complete 180, and I can't help but question his motives. I don't know what to do. I'm still hurt. I'm still processing everything that happened. I can't just turn my emotions off and pretend like none of this mattered. If he truly wanted to make things right, he should have been there for me when I needed him the most. He wasn't. And now, all of a sudden, he's acting like he wants to fix things. But it feels off. I just don't know what to think or feel. I want to believe that people can change. That maybe he's realizing how wrong he was. But deep down, I can't shake the feeling that his sudden change of heart isn't as genuine as it seems. AITA for not forgiving him for leaving me? Update 1. To people asking if my husband is cheating on me and maybe that's why he kept disappearing from my hospital room and was too hasty to leave me, I guess it does make sense. At first, I never even considered the possibility. I never suspected anything like that. I've never checked his phone or gone through his things because I trusted him. Or at least I thought I did. But now with everything that's happened, some of the things he did, especially his behavior when I was in the hospital, are starting to make me wonder if maybe there's more to the story than I originally thought. I mean, the way he disappeared from my hospital room, the way he couldn't even be bothered to stand by my side when I was at my lowest point, it just doesn't add up. He was so quick to walk out on me when I needed him most, so eager to separate without even thinking about how much it would hurt me. And then suddenly, after everything that's happened and the settlement comes into play, he's acting like he wants to be there for me again. It's almost like a switch was flipped, and now I can't help but question what his real motives are. Could he have been cheating on me? Was that why he was so distant? I don't know for sure. But some part of me can't help but wonder if that's a possibility. I hate to admit it, but it does make sense when I look back at everything. The way he was always more focused on himself than on us or our life together. It's like, for as long as I can remember, it's always been about him. He always expected everything to revolve around him. When we were in a relationship, it was his needs, his wants, his goals that came first. If he was sick or in pain, I'd drop everything to be by his side. I'd care for him, no questions asked. I'd be the one there, staying up all night, helping him through whatever it was. I'd do anything to make sure he was okay. And I always thought that's how a relationship was supposed to be. Mutual care, mutual support. But when it came to me, when I needed him, it was like none of that mattered to him. When I was in the hospital after the accident, he couldn't even be bothered to stick around. He couldn't even stay with me for more than a few minutes. He was so cold and distant. I don't even know how to explain it, but it felt like he just didn't care. I was in so much pain, physically and emotionally, and he just walked out. And now he wants to come back into my life after everything he put me through? After all the times I've put him first, after everything I've done for him? He couldn't even show up when I needed him the most. Looking back at it all, I see how selfish that man really is. It wasn't just the accident. It wasn't just about him leaving me in the hospital. It was about the fact that for so long, he's never really been there for me in the way I've been there for him. Our whole relationship, I've always been the one making sacrifices for him, making sure his needs were met, making sure he was happy. But when it was my turn to need him, when I needed him to show up for me, he wasn't there. And that hurts more than anything. I loved him, I really did. And part of me still wants to believe that maybe, just maybe, there's a chance for us to rebuild what we once had. But another part of me knows deep down that I can't keep giving to someone who isn't willing to give back. I just don't know what to do. Should I even let him back into my life after everything? Should I trust him again? Part of me feels like I should just move on, but another part of me wonders if that's just my hurt talking. I don't want to be bitter or angry, but at the same time, I can't ignore how much I've been hurt. It's hard to figure out what's best when all I've ever known in this relationship is putting someone else's needs before my own. Update 2. So I sat down and talked to my husband, or should I call him my ex now? After everything that's happened, I don't know how to refer to him anymore. He's not the man I thought I married. I told him straight up that I was done with him, that I was going ahead and signing the divorce papers. He looked shocked when I said this, like he couldn't believe what I was saying. He tried to argue with me, telling me that he was wrong, that he had time to realize his mistakes, and that he wanted to fix things between us. But honestly, I didn't want to hear it anymore. I shook my head. I couldn't even look at him in that moment. He had already shown me who he really was, and no amount of apologies or realizations was going to change that. I told him very calmly that I could never forgive him for the way he treated me in the hospital, for the cruel things he said to me. No husband should ever talk to his wife like that. No husband should ever walk out on his wife when she's at her most vulnerable, especially after a traumatic accident. I was better off without him, and that's when he snapped. He went from trying to be apologetic to being downright nasty. He told me that it wasn't fair of him to continue to stay with a wife who looked like me, that he did what any man would have done, and that I was asking for too much. He also threatened that he wasn't going to let me go so easily. He said that if I did go through with the divorce, then he was going to come after my $2 million settlement. He said he was owed his share. There it was, the real reason why he wanted to get back with me. It wasn't because he missed me. It wasn't because he realized his mistakes and wanted to fix things. It was all about the money. The way he said it was so vile, so greedy, that it made me sick to my stomach. I was furious. I stood up, shaking with anger, and I asked him, what exactly did he mean by owed? Did he get into an accident? Did he burn his face? Did he have scars that would take years to heal? Did he break his bones and need multiple surgeries? He was talking like he was entitled to something he didn't earn. I let the words hang in the air for a moment before I told him that if he genuinely thought he was owed anything, then we were going to find that out in court. And trust me, I was going to expose him for everything. I was going to make sure he walked away with nothing. He didn't take that well. He was pissed. I could see the rage building in his eyes, but I didn't care anymore. I was done. I told him to leave. I didn't want to hear another word from him. I didn't want him in my life anymore, especially not for this reason. He was nothing but a stranger to me at that point, someone who only cared about himself and his own selfish desires. It wasn't easy, but I stood my ground. I didn't want to back down. He'd already hurt me enough. He thought he could come back into my life because of the money, but I wasn't going to let him use me like that. I was done being treated like I was worthless. He walked out angrily when he saw that he couldn't manipulate me into changing my mind. I swear I will make sure he gets nothing from me anymore. It's time to teach him a lesson. Update 3. Hey everyone, it's been almost 8 months since my last update, and I just wanted to share where I'm at now. First of all, I did go ahead with the face surgery, and I'm happy to say that my scars have almost completely healed by now. It feels like a huge weight has been lifted off me. The pain and self-consciousness I was dealing with have slowly faded. And while I'm still recovering emotionally, my physical recovery has been one less thing to worry about. As for my ex, well, we're officially divorced now. In the end, he didn't get a single penny from me, no matter how much he and his lawyers fought for it. Honestly, I'm proud of how I stood my ground through the whole process. I knew I deserved better than the way he treated me, and I wasn't going to let him take advantage of me, not financially or emotionally. During our divorce proceedings, to make sure I wasn't missing anything, I even hired a private investigator. What he found out absolutely shocked me. It turns out that my ex had been having multiple affairs throughout our marriage from the very beginning. The worst part was that even when I was in the hospital after my accident, he was actually with one of his mistresses. He lied and told me at the time that he was on a work trip. The audacity of that cheater. All those years I spent wondering why he never loved me, why I was never enough for him. It turns out the answer was clear all along. He wasn't the man I thought he was, and he never truly cared about me the way I thought he did. Anyways, it's been a relief to know the truth about who he really was. That guy was not worthy enough to be with someone like me. Since the house we owned together was a joint property, we sold it and I took my share. I thought after the divorce I would be left alone, but my ex and his family have tried to reach out to me like greedy jackals. So I decided to pack up my things and move to another city. I needed a fresh start anyways. Currently, I live on my own in a small apartment, which is very cozy and perfect for me. It feels liberating, honestly. I feel like I'm finally in control of my life again. I've learned a lot about myself through this entire process, and I'm looking forward to what the future holds for me. Stay tuned for more stories from our girl relationships.